the food I eat. I love to live in your house, oh Lord. I love to be here at your feet and give to you the praise I bring, the praise I bring. For here in your house I find your embrace. You set on my head a garland of grace, and when I lift my hands, you fill me with more. Oh, I love to live in the house of the Lord. For here in your house I find your embrace. You set on my head a garland of grace, and when I lift my hands, you fill me with more. Oh, I love to live in the house of the Lord. Oh, I love to live in the house of the Lord. Oh, I love to live in the house of the Lord. Oh, I love to live in the house of the Lord. Oh, I love to live.
You're listening to Chameleon Church, biblical antidotes for the modern man, with your host, Allan Aguirre.
Good morning, friend.
Joe Biden. Good morning. Joe Biden making the news. These people, man. Unbelievable. Hey, Allan Aguirre with your Chameleon Church Show, coming to you live and direct from the Wasatch Back of northern Utah. My wife, when I brought her coffee this morning, she goes, "Why do you look so bundled up? It's cold." Fall colors. We are experiencing fall colors. Fall colors, y'all. Fall colors. Lenny Perata won't be joining us this morning. He's out camping, glamping at a river somewhere with umbrella drinks because it's, the last chance he'll get to go out this season. And I'm like, I haven't gone out yet at all.
That sounds fun.
So he sent me some pictures. It's a nice campground. I mean, it's literally right next to a pretty big river that has steelhead. And I'm like, you could fish right there. Why don't you fish?
Doesn't even have to leave his RV.
Apparently it's like real close to his house too. I'm like, that's pretty good. It's really hard to find, because I like boondocking, but it's really hard to find. Well, it's really hard to get to those lakes and rivers
I don't know what boondocking means.
where you just pretty much pull up to the side of where you just pull up somewhere and you're not plugged into anything and it's like absolutely primitive and you're self-sustained. That's always fun because you're going to find some really cool spots, but it's really hard to get to. I mean, you can get to them, but I don't have like, you know how they have those 4-wheel drive or off-road trailers that are ride real high.
Mm,
We're not, usually you see them with a Jeep. We're not, we don't do that. I was going to get a Jeep, but I had to get what I got because I have to have space inside for all those grandkids and their little friends.
nice.
And we have a regular low profile trailer. But I really like that idea of going to a lake or a river where it's not a actual campground where you just pull up. There is one lake we can do that, but it's only day use. It's first come, first serve. Anyway, they're at a campground that's literally on this really pretty wide lake river that they can actually that's where steelhead are running. So that's always a lot of fun. But it's wasted on people that don't actually fish. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I think I'm good. Yeah, it's crazy stuff, right? So this weekend is the beginning of the fall feasts. The new moon conjunction will be on Friday night. So we're thinking we'll see the visible crescent Saturday or Sunday, marking Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets, which is a high Sabbath. It's the only Rosh Chodesh. It's the only new moon that's a high Sabbath. And then the fall feasts are in full swing. 10 days later, on the 10th, and we'll let everybody know, because everybody lets each other know on Chameleon Church or on band actually, when they see it, if and when they see it and where. So we'll know what day will be the first day of the month, and then of course, then the 10th day of the month will be a high Sabbath. The 10th biblical month, the 7th month will be a high Sabbath for Yom Kippur. And then 5 days later, on the full moon, will begin on the 15th day of the month, will be the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, booths, ingathering. It has 4 names. Can you believe it? Sukkot is known as Tabernacles, booths, ingathering, and I guess it has 3 names. But that first day will be a high Sabbath as well, and that's an actual 8-day feast. It's like 7 days plus 1, and on the 8th day will be a high Sabbath as well. And then it's the end of the year, the end of the agricultural year, and yeah, bunch of people will be observing Rosh Hashanah this Friday with the Babylonian New Year. With apples and honey, and knock yourself out if you do that. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying it's not biblical. I'm just saying Rosh Hashanah doesn't show up in Leviticus 23. That was a made up thing, kind of like Christmas, Easter's. I still have diarrheas from Easter's.
I believe in science.
That's such a great movie, man. With the stretchy pants. Sometimes you wear a stretchy pants. You know what I had for a snack yesterday? The Lord's Cheeps. The Lord's Cheeps and salsa. Anyway, back to reality. No, Nacho Libre is reality. What's wrong with you people?
It's a commentary on reality.
Man,
It's a real commentary on reality, right?
it's a good movie. But anyway, make believe holidays like Christmas and Easter and Lent.
They're not sanctioned. They're not biblically sanctioned.
They're not. God doesn't observe them. He doesn't recognize them, and I don't think he actually shows up for those. So Rosh Hashanah is a fake thing. It's not the head of the year. It's the actual end of the year, and that's we explain that all in this little book called The Feast Unlocked.
Yep.
So anyway, a lot of people will be doing that on Friday. what else is going on? So that's all that is happening this week. Well, all that launches between now and next Tuesday's Chameleon Church. Looks like I'll be wrapping up chapter 15 of Romans. It looks like I'll be wrapping up Romans in the next couple weeks. Chapter 16 is a bunch of say hi to this guy, say hi to this guy with like really hard to say Roman names. Say hi to that guy, say hi to that guy. So
The Monday night thing.
trying to get this transcribing done so we can edit it so we can get that book to print. I think it'll be a good resource. I think it'll be pretty good. Yeah.
Well,
pretty good.
I'm looking forward to the feasts.
So, are you guys going to be doing the fall feast this year?
Yeah, I mean we do every year, but I'm trying to next level it this year.
So how are you going to next level it this year?
Well,
what does that mean?
Just be more intentional about stuff.
Nice.
So
everybody, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've told you about this property in play that a friend of mine bought.
Yes.
5-acre property with a barn.
Yeah.
And it's turned out to be a partnership for my nonprofit. So we've been taking care of it. We've had a couple events at it, and yesterday I ordered a yurt, canvas yurt, and we're building lean-tos because we've been clearing a lot of dead trees and stuff. So lean-tos, and gonna have people over, and probably won't do this every night, but the weekends, bonfire, worship. A couple friends will be here. It's gonna be great. Kids are excited. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get my kids and their friends into it, so it's fun.
Yeah. Camping and stuff. It's adult camping. That's good.
Yeah.
The yurt's going to be a good sukkah.
I don't know if I can talk my family into camping all week, but it's a property that's pretty close to our existing house, but
so
probably sleep out a couple weekends just for fun. But
so you've got a barn. That means you're gonna have to get some horses.
I'm allergic to horses, Alan.
Oh,
but yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
You're allergic to horses. Kind of. What happened to that guy?
Oh yeah. Psycho nerd.
So you're not a real cowboy.
No, I'm not a real cowboy. I just play one on TV.
I want to be a cowboy. You just play one on TV, huh?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Bible answer, man. I haven't fleshed this thought out, but when I was making coffee this morning, I'm like, oh, this would be a good thing to talk to Alan about. Is it it's one of the last Psalms, maybe 147, where he says he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And I was thinking of aspects of healing, and I haven't done a deep study on this. But I was thinking about there's this healing part, and then there's the binding part, if there's a difference, and then the word wounds. Even though you're healed, you might still have scars or wounds, or whether you're talking about a physical or like emotional. Just because you got healed or delivered from something, you're still going to have consequences or perhaps wounds to work through. And then I remembered about Jesus. Died, rose. So talk about the ultimate healing, right? Rises from the dead, but yet he still had scars, and they weren't necessarily healed up scars, because he has Thomas. It says Thomas put his finger in his wound. So I was just like wondering about this. Like, even though he rose from the dead, he wasn't completely there was scarification, there was something, but even that aspect of putting his finger in the wound. So even though there was healing inside out in process, what's going on with that? What do you think about that? I just thought that was interesting.
Right. Well, the cross reference is Ezekiel 34:14. I will seek the lost, I will bring back the strayed, and I will bind up the injured, and I will strengthen the weak. So even though Thomas could put his finger through, but the wounds were healed because they weren't bleeding.
Right.
So they're probably scar tissue. Like if you have
So it was like healed under, but the dead skin was on top. I just think it's really,
well,
in the very least, he leaves our scars for a story, for a
right.
testimony. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, right, but he's also in this body that doesn't look like our body because he's able to walk through walls, eat fish, walk through walls, and show himself to multiple people at different places at the same time. So his body apparently was a little bit
Different,
next level,
elevated,
elevated.
upgraded,
Yeah, he had a definite upgrade.
anointed.
Frank is using the word glorified.
Glory.
So I guess I can take this earring out and you can see right through it.
Right.
It's healed, but you can still see through the hole. I've got glorified earlobes.
But I thought that when I'm thinking about Jesus, I thought that was interesting that they left, because he could have healed the wounds complete, like not
Right.
wounds, the scars. There could have been like your earlobes.
He could have had no scarage.
Right, but there was something about that was important for some reason for
Well,
Thomas.
because the prophecy is he's going to show them his scars. They'll know that it was him that they pierced.
Yeah,
So it's like a badge of glory, or a
that's a
badge
good.
of honor and glory. He's going to be able to show them, look, I'm the one that you did this to, and I'm alive, and I'm back, and I'm pissed. And they're going to go, crap. I think
And
there's that concept behind it.
and then in Revelation, with a lamb appearing as slain.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
this like slaughtered lamb in the throne room.
being glorified heaven, glorified throne room. Yeah.
Man. I don't understand. So I was talking to somebody and they said, yeah, I remember they were talking about how, yeah, when I found out that, demons are actually real. And I'm like, that's a bit of a disconnect if you're a Christian not knowing that. But think about it, a lot of Christians have this like subconscious separation from the supernatural spiritual realm in their theology or in their it's not a focal point, I think, to a large mainstream Christian audience. And so when they come to this realization that all this invisible other world supernatural spiritual realm stuff is like for real and actually happening, and it's more real than their reality, it might be a little frightening for them. But how do you they must read the Bible differently than me, because they're reading it and there's a disconnect there, because you can't read, for example, Revelation 5, the throne room scene. You can't read the throne room scene and not think that there's something otherworldly going on. You got 24 elders. Those aren't necessarily human. They've been around a long time. You've got the 4 stinking living creatures, and you've got this lamb. And this is like a thing that's going on. And they sing the song of Moses, and they're constantly their crowns and bowls, and there's this worship thing. There's like this thing going on that we cannot relate to in the physical realm, because there's too much extra supernatural stuff going on. I'm not quite sure how people read the biblical narrative when it comes to the supernatural. when it comes to, was it Elijah? What prophet was it that ran faster than the horses? I mean, we're talking phew.
Yeah, Elijah.
And that was Elijah, right? Stuff like that, or fire down and consuming the altar and the prophets of Baal. I mean, all I can think of are all I know about are. I mean, I am high. My senses are heightened to the supernatural elements of the narrative, and I see that in Jesus. I mean, the whole Jesus thing is that, and then he gives us the ability to do the same stuff. And then you see Revelation, the book of the letter of the Revelation of John, and it's like, I don't know. I don't understand the disconnect. It's not just sci-fi. It's there. It's a real thing. But if you don't live in the spirit, there's going to be a disconnect, I think, to the spiritual realm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. To me, it's to me. So again, human social behavior is absolutely fascinating to me, and I've been a huge study of it my whole life. Which is, I mean, you have to be, if you're a songwriter, you have to be in tune or connected to that stuff. I have to be able to create art that's going to appeal to people, not just a couple family members and 2 or 3 friends. You know what I'm saying? When you make a record, you want to sell more than 25 of them. You want to sell more than you give away. And so being a study of human social behavior is part of that. And I've always been fascinated by humanity's inability or disconnection with what I perceive to be reality or probable or going on. And I see that in politics. I see that in the spiritual realm. I see that in matters of faith. It was disturbing to me to come back to the U.S. after being saved for 3+ years and seeing and experiencing what I saw and experienced, to find out that Christians here didn't believe in this stuff. That was really scary, because up till that point, the majority of my faith profile was nothing but, supernatural stuff left and right. And then to come back here and it's like, and there was nothing. I mean, I remember they took me to a youth group thing. I think it was Campus Crusade or Campus Life or something, one of those weird things. And they were like, "Man, wasn't that awesome?" I'm like, God never showed up. Your worship was you were just singing singing. It wasn't worship. God never showed up in your worship. Nobody was healed. There was no prophetic. There was nothing happened. And they're like, "Oh, God does. That's not for today." I'm like, "What the hell?" It was the weirdest thing. And I would upset people because they would take me to men's meetings. "Oh man, wasn't that awesome? What'd you think?" I'm like, my omelet was good. My breakfast was good. And they would get, "Man, what do you mean?" I'm like, "It,
You're like, my bacon was good.
yeah, there was nothing. Yeah, there was nothing of substance here. God didn't show up. You didn't go anywhere. You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. Nothing happened." And they couldn't understand where I was coming from. They thought I was just a jerk but I had a reference that they've never experienced, they've never had. And it's hard to explain. It's like talking to a garage band. It's hard to talk to a garage band about performing rights royalties, performing rights societies, all the business, all the stuff that's involved. And, what do you mean you practice 3 nights a week, 4 hours a night? But it's a foreign concept.
Right.
Working band and garage band, those are 2 different things. Merch, mail order. I remember when I first met HR, first thing he asked me was, how's your mail order? Because it was mail order back then. How's your mail order? That was the first thing he asked me when it came to business. Yeah, because it's a certain thing. It's the same thing, and that's why I use the music analogy so often. It's because it really is very similar when you're dealing with an amateur hobby garage band versus an actual working business. It's the same thing. Nominal Christianity and biblical Christianity. They're two incredibly different things, and there's a huge divide. There's a huge chasm between the two.
How so you weren't aware of that before you left the country? Part of that
Well,
because you weren't
I wasn't
in
a Christian.
fellowship or was yeah. So so you could sum it up, fast forward saying a lot of people in churches aren't Christians. Yes?
I I would say yes.
Hmm.
Simply based on the biblical narrative. Jesus said, God is spirit. He must be worshipped in spirit and truth. But that's the problem though. Christians actually believe they're spirit filled, even though they haven't had they don't know because they haven't been taught because of their denomination. There's two baptisms. Baptism of water. The baptism unto John is the terminology that was used in Acts. Have you been baptized in the Holy Spirit? We don't know about that.
Have
We've
you
been
been
baptized
baptized?
unto John. And then Paul goes, "Oh, laid hands on them, baptized them in the Holy Spirit, and they started speaking in tongues." They and that's because Christianity doesn't know that water baptism is salvation. What must we do to be saved? Confess with your mouth that Jesus is God, that God rose him from the dead, and be baptized in water. That's salvation. But at some point, those two were separated. You do this, confess Jesus in your mouth, receive sinner prayer into your heart thingamajigger, and then somewhere down the road you get water baptized. Maybe. I know a lot of people that have never been water baptized, and it's like, why? I know a lot of people that don't believe that water baptism is even necessary. I've heard of that, and it's like, what are you doing? That's salvation. And then the separate, and then baptism in the Holy Spirit is a separate baptism. This is all in your New Testament. But it's not like people read, like we've done this before. It's not like people read the Bible with any sort of reading comprehension or reading retention. They don't know how to read the Bible, and they don't know how to read it contextually. And they're only going by what they've been told by their pastor or by their denomination. And they don't know this stuff. So it's quite frustrating. Um, because especially when you're like working with new musicians, and you know this, when you're working with new musicians and you're a musical mentor or whatever, and you're doing that, and you're wanting to help, or okay, I know a band that I think is absolutely amazing. I think they're really 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 awesome. They're incredibly creative, and this guy's an amazing songwriter, producer, arranger. I mean, this stuff is so good. I listen to the demos, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't I can't do that. And I wanna sign them, and I wanna record them, and I wanna get their music out. But the guy has literally no mental capacity to even get to the point of getting into the studio, letting me record him in the studio and produce them. It's like they're so not he will be a hobbyist. I can't believe that he won't be nothing more than a hobbyist simply because he doesn't have the ability to see any of it through. Just and we're talking just the basic. Let's just get it on tape. You know what I mean? And it's really frustrating because it is so good. If for any reason, you know why this calendar exists? Because I wanted one. I made it for myself, and then I thought, well, I might as well make more, and maybe I can sell a couple, to pay for it. But if anything, for my own listening pleasure, I'd love to get this guy recorded. But he does. But it's like he's not capable psychologically, mentally, intellectually, whatever. And it's so frustrating because I think his music would be so well received. Well, the same thing I have the same frustration with Christians because it's like, oh no, I'm good. I received Jesus into my heart. I go to church. It's like that's not even what this is. That's not even what this is about. This isn't even about that. This is really about this. And they don't even know what this is. They don't, first of all, they don't believe in this, let alone know that it even exists. That's why it gets frustrating. And I'm so passionate about getting this information and helping people suss it out, because it is a lot more important than whether you write a song or whether you record a song. And it's a lot more important than what color shirt should I wear today. It is like vastly important. It literally is spiritual life and death. And that whole Jesus thing, I came to give them life and life more abundantly. It's impossible without without having this piece. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Have you been aware of this? Speaking of pop culture, this Oliver Anthony guy, singer.
Who?
His name's Oliver Anthony.
Who's that?
Real name Christopher. He wrote this song, "Richmond, North of Richmond."
Oh, is it that country guy that just went viral?
Yeah,
The political whatever?
It has like 60 million views on his YouTube. He's like filming it on his property.
I've only heard about it. I've not actually gone and checked it out. What about it?
It's nuts. The song is taken, they show him in a field, or, he's at some farmer's market thing and people are chanting USA, USA. It's like becoming this lightning rod for the blue collar, anti-government kind of a politician thing. But he's on Joe Rogan. He's reading the book of Ecclesiastes and Proverbs on Joe Rogan.
I saw that.
It just, I was like, oh, Allan's got so it's like, and Steph, my wife, tipped me off to it. She's like, have you checked this out? Like everything I've read. And I was like, Kris has to see this. Some guy, creative, doing his art, like you're saying, and then it just right time, right place, blowing up. But like he's talking about his encounter. Joe Rogan's asking about it. And so like, a week, 2 weeks before this all happened, he's at the end of his rope in his car thinking about killing himself. And he says, he like gives it up and is like, there's no way I'm going to do this if I'm giving it all to you. I'm giving you my alcohol. I'm giving you my everything. Just looking for purpose. Help me. Writes this song, goes viral. And so,
jeez.
But all these doors are opening for him. And now, people are trying to book him. He canceled concerts because the tickets were over $40. And he's just like, no. He's turned down an $8 million deal. He's just like, Billboard. He's on Billboard, top of the Billboard above Taylor Swift. And it's just like, this hit guy. It's fascinating on commentary on what's happening in culture now. But
well, I'm telling you, man, this is the blue, where you started with this, the blue collar, everyone's chanting USA, USA. I think what's happened to an extent is blue collar America, regular America, society. They weren't aware of what really happened with this last election, and they can't believe that a third world bait and switch occurred. They're kind of like desensitized to it. They're not they can't believe that something like this would actually happen in this country, and so they're in denial to an extent. But then they've watched what's happened in the last 2 years. They know what they had, and now they see what's been going on, and they're like over it, man. They're like, this is not our country, with all the take a knee and the national anthems and all that nonsense that happened for a couple of years. Did you see? There's video of these huge arenas singing the national anthem at the top of their lungs with huge American flags, and everybody's in on it, man. I think everyone's over it. They're like, you know what? We don't want to live like that. We don't want that type of country. We don't want this type of politics. We don't want to be misrepresented like this. We don't need some guy drooling on himself in front of the frickin' planet at a global conference. It's like they're I think they're over it, and they're like waking up to the reality that this has really happened, and this has really happened, and what they're saying didn't happen really happened, and what really happened didn't happen. And I think they're waking up to that, and it's scary, man. It's a little scary. Man.
Yeah, I was reading something about it that it's Bob Dylan-esque in that right time, right place, Vietnam War, like that whole.
Mhm.
There's a cultural turning. And he's being a voice to what people are thinking and saying, and they can identify with this guy that seems like them
Yeah.
or out of the closet or a nobody.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
I mean, I think the
it's
Bud Light.
interesting. The leader, how a leader, like you think about Moses,
Oh man.
like
Yeah.
at the right time, there's a story, something changes and accelerates. It's
Yep.
just interesting. Hmm.
Mhm. Good analogy of like a Moses. But it's like that. It's like the Bud Light can thing. It's like people are going, "What are you doing?" No, no. I mean, all I can think about is that verse. When I was a child, I put away childish things. I
Hmm.
don't play make believe. No, I'm sorry. You're not a purple yellow. You're not a purple flying monkey. You just aren't. You're not purple, and you can't fly, and you're not a monkey. I don't care what you think you are or what you identify as. And no, it's not hate speech to tell you that you're not a purple flying monkey. It's just, I think it's fascinating. And here's the thing: this has happened before. It's not like this is a new thing. The degradation, is it degradation or the degradation? What's the word of a society based on an absolute false narrative and a false position on all things. I mean, that's why it's in the scripture, calling evil good and good evil and light dark and dark light. It's like it's here's the thing. Lucifer knows he's going to fail. He knows he's not going to be victorious. What he's doing, and he knows what his end is. The lake of fire is made for the devil and his angels and liars. See, it was never intended for humans. It was made for the devil and his angels. And so because he knows what his end is, and how do we know that? Well, look at the demons that were in Legion. It's not our time yet, they told Jesus. We know who you are. It's not our time yet. It's not their time to be expelled. And Jesus goes, "Oh, I know." And he put him into the swine instead. They know they have a limit. They know that they have a time limit. And they know what's going to happen to them at the end of that time limit. Well, so what he's trying to do then is he's trying to take as many humans, bounty, as he's trying to take as many humans with him. Because that's going to be upsetting to the Father, because the Father desires that all men come to the full knowledge. He desires that all men would come to salvation. But he knows that's just not going to happen as well. So the enemy's trying to take as many humans as he possibly can with him. So if he can somehow convince you of all this stuff, and that's why it's so frightening. The Christian left is so frightening to see that happens, because they've completely have been bought. They've completely bought into this other script, and we're watching these worship leaders. Oh yeah, no, go ahead, take psychedelic drugs. It's going to help you with your worship. No, no, no. Krishna and Jesus, they're both the same. And they've got, promotional Gunga, right? With Jesus on a unicorn with Krishna riding off into a rainbow sunset or something. It's insane. They've been absolutely compromised. And It's spiritual. And it's easy for it, and it's easy for it to happen because I'm telling you, I don't care how Christian you are. This ancient foe of ours, Lucifer, is a lot smarter than you are. He's a lot more crafty than you are. He doesn't play by the rules. He'll come after your children. I mean, he doesn't play fair. And unless we understand this stuff and we're equipped with the armor and weapons of light and all the stuff we talk about, how are we going to pull off Ephesians 6 if we don't know demons are real? How are we going to pull off Ephesians 6 if you don't speak in tongues? How are you going to pull off Ephesians 6 with a nominal Christianity? It's just not possible. It's impossible. Because you're everywhere that I'm not. Oh. It's he's just trying to he's just trying to deceive as many of you as possible, and he's doing a really good job of it. And yeah, and this has happened before. It's not new. I mean, have you ever read the account of Israel in the Promised Land and all the various ways they compromised? They didn't tear down all the Asherah. They didn't get rid of the Baal altars. They actually embraced them. They actually incorporated them into their false worship of Adonai. You had Baal altars in the temple and temple prostitutes, male and female. And we thought, we're good. God's not seeing us and he's not hearing us because he ain't stopping us, and we're going to keep on going. Tammuz, Ezekiel, and it got to the point where they were offering their own children to Molech. We're just like Israel. So we have to. So what's the answer? Well, we have to be of sound spiritual mind, and the majority, and a lot of us simply aren't. We just aren't. Oh man, there's this the stuff that I see out there is just insane. Well, Adam and Eve only had 3 kids; they didn't have any daughters. So where the children? It's like, really? It says right here they had other sons and daughters. It's like, it's just they when this government, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm just not going to say it. We have to have we have to be of sound spiritual mind. We have to be of sound mind and a sound spiritual mind. And we need to stop believing. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you know what you're doing. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have a freaking clue about any of this. And you need to submit to authority, and you need to submit to those that can and that do. If you want to make $100,000 a year, you don't follow people that make $25,000 a year. You go find someone that's already made that's making more than that, right? There's a thing called discipleship. There's a thing called mentoring. There's a model in the Gospels on how this is done, and and the majority of people have deviated from that model. And they're rogue. For some reason, they think they're smarter than they're smarter than everybody else, and that guy's a false prophet, and that guy's a false prophet, and that guy's a false prophet. Oh, are you a prophet? Nope. Oh, well, then what are you talking about? Because they don't know. Only prophets can out another prophet. It's like, again, if you're down here, what are you doing up here? What are you doing trying to do anything up here? It's like, it's insane. It's insanity. It literally is insanity. And that's because Lucifer infiltrated the church a long, 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 long time ago. And it's just going to get intense, more intense. This is going to get even worse. You need to know that this over here is not what's really happening. You got to know the difference between a Korah and a Moses. You have to know, why should I stick with Moses and not go with this Korah guy? And we just found out some stuff over the weekend about some of our old church people in Dallas. Oh my gosh. We've had to sit here for 10 years looking at them going, what's going on over there, man? What's happening to these people over there? And the level, let me put it this way, the level of compromise is worse than I thought. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. It's like, it can happen to the best of us. I mean, if you're not careful, it can happen to you. And I see, and I know this. So I'm overtly cautious of, you gotta be of sound mind. You gotta be of sound spiritual mind. You have to be under submission and authority and leadership. You can't do this on your own, because you can be deceived. I can be deceived. You have to have areas of accountability, right? I can't fix something that I don't know is broken. If Kris is like, gee, Allan, you were really off the rails today. Is everything okay? I have to, that's why when people go, how you doing? I go, how do I look? Because I see this face all day long. I'm not going to see the gradual degradation or whatever of my face or whatever. It's like, how do I look? You look great. Awesome. Then I'm doing fine. Because I can believe until I'm blue in the face that I'm okay. And these people are not okay. A lot of the people we were running around with in Texas are not okay, and it's absolutely frightening. Like, wow, is it really all just about money? It's bizarre. But it can happen. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. You got to keep ourselves in check. You got to be under accountability. You've got to be submitted to man, to authority, to leadership.
So daily, the way I've been saying it lately is daily proactivity.
Yeah.
With the Holy Spirit. And the language around it, I needed someone to hold me accountable. It's like, no, you need to be accountable. You choose to be accountable to someone. That person isn't like, did you do this? Did you do this? It's someone that you choose to submit to. But it's an interesting, let's say I'm in an accountable relationship to you, right? You're my mentor, which you are. And if it's not your job to make me obey. It's my responsibility to be real with you and tell you what's going on. But in the worst case, you would say to me, "Well, what's your daily walk with the Holy Spirit? How are you being active?" And I'd be like, "Well, but the point is, if I was proactive with the Holy Spirit every day and engaging and putting time into developing that, spiritual muscles, as it were, I wouldn't need you.
Yeah.
Like, if I was submitted to the Holy Spirit and walking, I would. Um, I think in the best case where you have that, where someone is being proactive with the Spirit every day, the mentor, the person you're accountable to, helps you with, oh, I have this problem with my wife, or what should I do? I feel like the Lord saying this. What would you bring clarity to my head? But I've seen that the worst situation I've been close to. I remember when it happened, and it was a senior leader, a pastor of many churches over 40 years, and all the affairs came out. And I remember hearing it, and I was just like, "What? What?" And then you're on that fence of like judgment, or like that guy's an idiot, and I just felt this check in my heart, like that could be you. Like rather than jumping on the bandwagon to bash, I felt this sadness in my heart, like, okay, Lord, that please,
Yeah.
please don't let my heart go cold to you, because that was the problem. Having the affair was a result of where his heart was, or and but you're right. They can if we could it could be all good with the Lord, and then we step out or go a day, go a week, go a year, go years, believing the world's narrative without pursuing the Lord for wisdom and for discernment. You end up in this place that's like the dry desert. You strayed off from the stream,
Yeah.
wandered off from your boondock.
It's gradual, it's subtle, doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. For the Lord's great mercy, we are not consumed. Stay in his mercy. Stay in his
Yeah.
graces.
And it's hard to do when you're not in fellowship. I mean, that's why it says,
Yeah.
don't forsake the assembly of the brethren. Submit yourselves one to another and you'll be healed. If you're sick, go to the elders and get prayer so you can be healed. If you're not in fellowship, you're not going to be able to do any of that. That's why we push the fellowship thing so much. Oh, but I can't find a charis. We talked about it last night. I can't find a charismatic Torah-based church. Good luck. You're probably not going to. It took me 20 years. It took me 20 years in this country to find a legitimate church. And then when I found it, after like 4 or 5 years, it started getting stupid. And this is the church I'm talking about that is totally, completely lost their freaking minds in the 10 years we've been here in Utah. A lot of the leaders in that church. And it's like, Peter was under authority and accountable. James, all those guys in the Bible that you read about, they were not just these lone wolves running around doing whatever the hell they wanted. It doesn't work that way. This is, I've shared this before. I got an email the other day. Help me, my marriage. I haven't talked to you in years. Why are you coming to me? I guarantee you, he doesn't. He's not. It's textbook. You're all screwed up because you're not doing anything right. You're not going to church. That's why you're reaching out to me in an email. Why aren't you talking to your pastor? You probably don't have a pastor because you're not under submission. You're not doing any of the stuff in its proper order. You're not doing this thing the way it's laid out for you to do. So I
Can
have these. What's that?
offer perspective on that one?
Yeah.
I think it's great they're coming to you, and they're coming to you because you've lived it out and they know you are. So that's the shred of hope. So
Yeah.
I would encourage you to like know what to say.
Yeah. No, I
Like,
understand that. Yeah, I
yeah,
understand why they do reach out, but I'm looking at the
it's frustrating.
other part of it. The what to do to keep you from doing that,
Right.
And so, for example, these people reach out, and so I always ask them like the same 4 or 5 questions, and I know the
Mhm.
answers every single time. Are you in fellowship? Do you go to church? And they get on their soapbox about church, and I have to remind them, hey, you came to me. Don't forget who you're talking to. I can trump you with this anti-church thing. I've got more reason not to be involved with church than all of you combined. But I'm not lawless. I'm a man under submission. Do you go to church? No. Are you in the word? Do you eat the word like food? Well, no, right? Do you pray? How's your prayer life? And I'm not talking about quiet, if it's in your mind, you're thinking about God, you're not actually praying. If you're not disciplined in prayer, you should be doing it audibly simply because you've got to get past this hoop right here. There's a blockage right here. No. So they don't go to church, they don't read the Bible, they don't pray. What about what about fasting? Well, I don't know. I've never fasted. And then I'm like, okay, so explain to me why you identify as a Christian. You don't go to church, you don't read the Bible, you don't pray, you don't fast, and they don't worship. Why do you identify as a Christian? Are you saying that I'm not a Christian? No, sweetheart, you are. And you're wondering why your life is falling apart. You're wondering why nothing's working out. You're wondering why. Well, that's why. It's
Hmm.
not it's not a t-shirt, it's not an ornament, it's not an accessory. Christianity isn't something you're supposed to do. It's what you're supposed to be. It's who you are, or you're not. And I understand not everyone's going to do it. I understand that. That's fine. But you can't cry, one, you can't cry foul. Two, you can't have an opinion about anything because you're not one of us. And you need to submit and break yourself on the rock of salvation. That's Jesus. And until you have a revelation of the person of Jesus Christ, of Messiah, you're probably gonna, I never say the word Christ. And unless you have a revelation of who Jesus is, you're SOL, man. That's shucks out of luck. That's what SOL.
Super out of luck.
Yeah, super out of luck. It's like, but see, that's how far removed people get, and it can happen to any single one of us at any moment. But it's a gradual. It's a gradual. It doesn't just happen overnight. I see something in a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and I'm like, were you aware of you weren't aware when they were 7 or 8 or 9, because that's, it didn't just happen overnight. That's why I'm constantly on top of things. You got to be constantly on top of things. You have to be. I don't want to wake up one day and find out, oh, look at how compromised I am now.
Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Actively pursuing the gifts of the Spirit. What's another one-liner? What's another tweet?
Draw near to him and he'll draw near to you.
Mm-hmm.
Resist the devil and he will flee.
What's the one about armor of God?
Put on the armor. Yeah.
Put on the full, you're active, you pick it up, you know its size, full, don't forget your belt,
Be a living sacrifice, take up your cross daily. No, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Okay, then. That's fine. That's fair. You don't have to. That's the best thing about this thing. You don't have to do it. But do know, if it doesn't bite you now, it'll bite you later on. Because see, here's what I always tell people: if you're marked of God, if you're truly one of God's, He'll frustrate all your plans if you choose not to serve Him. And you're better, you don't want to be. Remember, it's like that. It's that band, that one band. Well, now it's like dozens of bands, but being a rock star is like equivalent to that. Remember when you were on the merry-go-round and back in the old days, the original merry-go-round, and you were supposed to grab the ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had that ring. I've had that ring in my hand multiple times. Chances of you having that ring in your hand once ain't gonna happen. I've had it multiple times, and I've had it. You're like my precious, and God's gone. Come here, son. Let me have that. You're gonna hurt yourself. And so that's why, I didn't succeed to the extent that I wanted to. God was saving me from myself. And I've always been grateful to that. Well, there's this band that we all know that I know you've heard of, and you probably like, and you might even have their records. They were already like on the borderline. They were barely saved. Barely. They were, what I'm saying? They were barely doing this thing. And they got this huge stinking record deal. And I was like, oh my gosh. Is it, it's not that God doesn't love them, but why did He not spare them too? Because they got this crazy record deal and they blew up, as far as rock and roll. And then their lives blew up and their salvation. And and none of them serve the Lord. It's like they are a casualty. They did not survive that big old record deal. And I've always been grateful that God spared me that, because that would suck. How much would that suck? To be multi-platinum, Grammy-winning, blah, 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 and divorce and disenfranchised and estranged from your children, and just, and your whole life is a complete shit show. Did I just say that out loud? I'm sorry. It's just, but that's how the reality of it. Their lives are train wrecks. They don't have God, you know. But they've got this. I'm sorry I said that. Well, that can happen to any one of us, not just a rock and roll star. That can happen to you for whatever reason. You know, maybe you're bitter about something, and your bitterness is just eating you alive. It's like a spiritual cancer, and you can't find peace, and you're bitter, and nothing's working out.
Hmm.
You know, it could be jealousy. You keeping up with the Joneses, trying to give everybody the impression that you've got it, that you're all figured out. You got it all figured out. Living in the right neighborhood, driving the right car, wearing the right clothes, and you're just an empty, shallow shell. You know, maybe you're living vicariously through your child because it could be any number of reasons. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of man, you know.
We cannot do life without the Spirit.
Sure do
Have you been
try.
have you been baptized? Have you been baptized in the Holy Spirit? Hmm. Uh, Verses coming in my mind. The life according to the Spirit is life and peace. Where's that?
I don't know.
Yeah, Romans 8. Romans 8:6. Oh yeah. I'll back up verse 5. Romans 8:5. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. I think that's what you're saying when these people come out of the woodwork or 20, 30 years down the road, you hear about all the destruction that has been sown and reaped in their life. That's the opposite of life and peace.
Yeah.
So years, weeks, months of living without the Spirit is going to bring non-life and non-peace, chaos. Oh, this is interesting if you keep reading. For the mind that is set on the flesh
I
is
just did a whole
hostile.
study on this. Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, hostile to God, for it
Yeah.
does not submit to God's law.
And it can't.
Indeed, it cannot.
Yep. And yeah, it's see, when you're spiritually minded,
Hmm.
you're okay with saying no to your lifelong dream. You know what I'm saying? You're okay to let that go because God knows better. God knows what's better for me. You know, when you walk in the Spirit, it's okay to consider the other more than yourself. It's okay to submit because people ask me. People literally have asked me, how do you do this? How do you not get offended? How do you da 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 da? How do you still care? How do you still keep going after what they've said and what they've done? I'm dead, man. I don't have feelings. I don't have rights. I'm dead. I've died to my flesh. I've died to myself. I pick up my cross daily. My life is my sword belongs to my sovereign. You can say whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want. It doesn't bother me. It's because it bounces right off. My skin is thick because I don't have an agenda. I'm not. My life is not my own. I've made that choice. I've made that conscious choice. I've made that decision, and I do my darndest to live up to that conviction and to that concept and to that spiritual truth, that revelation. on a daily basis. Whether I'm doing a live stream or not, whether I'm writing books or not, whether you've ever known me or ever met me or ever heard of me, I've been doing this before you heard of me. That's why I always go, oh, that's why you always hear me say stuff like, oh, Alyssa on a Monday night, because Alyssa's been around for like 12 years. Or Kris has been around since the 90s. Or Lenny, he was my pastor from the 80s. We started working with Lenny 87, 88. Why? Because see, these are how Israel had stacks of rocks. God would show up and and they would pile up a bunch of rocks so they could go back to it and go, no, God showed up. God said what he said. Well, people in my life are rocks too. I haven't just been doing this for 2 days or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Alyssa goes back 12. Kris goes back to the 90s. Lenny goes back to the 80s. And I could even introduce you to a pastor that was a pastor of mine when I got saved at the age of 15. So that's why I do that. That's why I always point to these people. And I do it regardless. I do it whether you've ever heard of me or not. I will continue to do this when you stop listening to me and you stop watching these shows. Because it's not about any of that. It's about my relationship with Messiah. And I want to do it well. I don't want to be a half-assed Christian. Sorry. I don't want to be a lukewarm Christian. There you go. I should have my own paraphrased version of the Bible.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, man. I guess lukewarm is the other way to say it, isn't it? And I do apologize if I'm offending you with my language. You should be more concerned with the content and apply it to your life than how I'm saying it. Your house might be on fire.
Would you say, okay, the setup of the question is where you hear this often, and I felt it. I know you felt it, where you're like, man, I wish there was a church, or I could find someone, a small group, or meet someone that was trying to do this thing, messianic charismatic, or even before messianic charismatic, like and feeling, man, there's no one out there. I went to this church. I went to this church. I mean, it requires a certain kind of stamina, doesn't it? Like to like not give up in finding that group, or someone might not feel they're the
Yes.
leader and start their own. Like what? I mean, how do you
Right.
speak encouragingly to those people that are discouraged, or like how you?
Right. Well, remember, humans, they live life. A lot of them, the majority of us, live life like this. I see value in fellowship. I see, and I find value in the assembly of the brethren. And this is a guy you're talking, and I've been, I've been hurt by church. I mean, I could sit here and tell you stuff that you would never imagine could happen to a person at church with church. It's happened to me. But I'm still right. Jehoshaphat. I use him as an example, and I've used him as an example. If there was anyone to ever discredit the prophetic, it's Jehoshaphat, who sat in front of 400 prophets and they were all lying because they were all being subject to a lying spirit from God. If anyone had any right to ever think or go, yeah, prophetic, that ain't real, it was Jehoshaphat, but he didn't. And I gave examples of that in This Thing is Spiritual. Because when the prophet spoke, he had the whole country submit to the authority of the prophetic after being in front of 400 lying spirit prophets. So I've been in some really, really bad church situations. So how do you keep going? Well, because I know that's not God. I know that's not the Spirit of God. That's man. And I value the Spirit of God. I value fellowship and worship, and I value that stuff. So I will drive an hour. I've been known to drive 6 hours one way just to be in fellowship with a good body of believers.
So
Most people
would
aren't going to do that.
could you say it's a confidence in your identity and knowing who you are and who God is?
Yeah, you have to start there. You have to know who God is, and you have to know the difference between who God is and who God isn't. And you can't be hung up by what men do and how men misrepresent themselves in God. Being a part of the music industry gives you that thick skin because it's all about, disappointment. I mean, there's a lot of disappointment in the entertainment industry. Oh, you think you're going to get that deal? It's like this constant, you have to have tenacity. If you don't have tenacity, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not even going to get anywhere near the game. You have to be tenacious. Well, in the same thing, it's the same thing in the spiritual realm. It's the same thing with God. You have to be tenacious. You have to continue. You have to keep going, even if you don't think you see results. You have to keep going. Moses was tenacious, 40 stinking years. I mean, every patriarch was tenacious. They didn't give up. Abram to Abraham, tenacious. He was this new field manual that I'm late in finishing. Just spent a couple, just did a couple of devotionals with Abraham, and how look at the years, 25 years. God begins speaking to him, and it isn't until it's another 25 years before he actually has Isaac. So the promise of Isaac and the promise of being a father of many nations, God spoke into his ear for 25 years, and he had nothing to show for it. And he screwed up with the handmaid, and then he finally gets Isaac, and then how many years later God tells him to sacrifice Isaac, and he does. That's being tenacious. That's knowing that God is who he is. It's knowing that God is sovereign. It's knowing that God is not a man and he's not going to lie. And he's going to give you bread, not stone. He's going to give you fish, not rock, not snake. See, if you don't know who he is, you're never going to know who you are. And you have to know who you are in him, or this thing doesn't work. You won't trust him. You won't believe him. And you have to.
So there's
in order to succeed.
There's something about courage, tenacity, confidence, and then believing God on his promise. Like global promises in scripture, but then things that he has said to you when you've been with him or through others,
Yeah.
and not letting go, like the hem of the garment analogy.
Yeah.
Like I know times are hard, but I know what you said and I know who you are. I'm not giving up.
I love the way they showed the woman with the issue of blood reaching out for this. I mean, that's exactly how it happened. I know it.
In the chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like no matter what. See.
Yep.
And here's how we can end it. To answer your question, my Christianity has never been based on I don't want to go to hell. That never happened. Now, I don't want to go to hell. And I work really hard to do what I need to do. Hopefully I'm in alignment, and hopefully I want to hear well done, good and faithful servant. Right. But my whole reason for doing this and my whole reason for being here has never been, I don't want to go to hell. No, it's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's their Babylonian names. Mishael. I can always forget their Hebrew names. Isn't that weird? But I know Meshach was Mishael, which is my grandson's middle name. It's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I will not bow down to your idols. And my God is absolutely, completely capable of delivering me from the fire you are going to throw me into for not bowing down to your idols. But even if he doesn't, I'm still not going to bow down to your idols. See, he's sovereign. If he saves me from hell's fire, it's because of his sovereignty. If he doesn't save me from hell's fire, it's because of his sovereignty. But regardless, I am not going to bow down to your idols. My sword is his. Why? Because that's the right thing to do. I love him who first loved me. So I'm not going to bow down to your idols. He's capable and totally capable of delivering me from the fire. But even if he doesn't, I'm not going to bow down to your idols.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.